Hi, DE Psych. Welcome to week 8. Every time I do a welcome to week, whatever it may be, I keep thinking, oh my gosh, we've been in quarantine for 8 weeks now, or stay safe at home, and we only go up to week 11. So the light is at the end of the tunnel, guys. We are almost done with online learning for this year, and keep with it. Super proud of you all. Was excited to hear you guys talk about things that you've been doing with your families and the inventive and creative things. And I just, having talked about gardeners this past week, I was just really excited about how you guys are honing in on maybe some different intelligences than you normally would at this time of the year. And that reinforces to me of how unique of an opportunity this is for you. And as much as it sucks, maybe looking at the bright side of things and how you've had maybe some opportunities to do some things that you haven't gotten to do since you were young. And so I really enjoyed that. Thank you for sharing with me those things. Some of you are creating some really cool stuff or just making memories. And I really hope that you guys can see the bright side of those things. Thought I'd play a little Bouncing Souls today. But let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot going on. So once again, a reminder that we have our lasts of our readers' notebooks that are separated into 2 sections. So it's really 2 readers' notebooks, but 4 questions each chapter, and that will be graded as 2 separate readers' notebooks. So you may be full graded for the personality one and then completion graded for the social psych one, or vice versa. Or some of you may be full graded for both of those. So again, I would suggest you looking at PowerSchool and figure out what you have left. Okay. So there's that unit organizer right here. And here's where you'll submit the reader's notebook. I'm going to go ahead and say the date and write it down. Do something to remember this. Sunday, May 17th at 11:59 p.m. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and jump into quarantine week 8. I want you guys to take a look. So this week's participation is slightly different than the normal. CMC has asked me to give you guys a survey in regards to classes that you're taking that are DE classes, or what they refer to as SEPA. So if you see those words or that abbreviation, SEPA, then that's what it means, DE, dual enrollment types of classes. In addition, I was asked by NHS to give this to my students, and this is a teacher nomination form. If you want to nominate a teacher, you can see the categories. There's 2 different awards that they're giving. One is called the Devil's Treasured Teacher Award, and nominating a teacher that maybe during this time period of uncertainty has kind of gone above and beyond. And then the Devil's Stupendous Staff Award to honor staff who've worked very hard this year and continue to help students through this time period. So read about those descriptions, and then the links to nominate are right there. Okay, so that is this week's. Instead of doing a participation discussion like we have been doing, or an assignment, those surveys or nominations are kind of what we're doing in lieu of that. Let's go to Monday here. Again, we're still looking at how personality is shaped, and we're going to get a little bit more into Freud's theories and postulations about how our personality was shaped. And I also want to remind you guys that there is the video up for the final. So take a look at the final folder. Let me just jump in there. I forgot to do this before I started talking about our lesson for today. Seems to just be a lot of housekeeping stuff. Right here, it's the DE final. Go into that folder, watch the video, tell you exactly what you need to do. You could probably get a step ahead of that and be done with the final and just have to do the coursework from here on out. So that is an option for you guys. I am posting that final early. Okay, so back to Freud. So we're going to talk a little bit about Freud's, what we call his structural theory. And we're going to take a look at what he terms as part of our personality called the id, the ego, and the superego. And then we're going to do an assignment with what Freud determines is ways that we try and protect our ego through using defense mechanisms. So let's go ahead and talk about the id, the ego, and the superego so we can understand how we try and protect our little egos. All right, so this is a continuation from our last notes. And the first thing I want to talk about is the id. So Freud's structural theory is that our personalities have three major components to it. And the first one is the id. So the id is the part of our personality that wants to satisfy our most primitive drives. And it wants to satisfy those drives now. And what I mean by drives, I mean by eating, sleeping, drives that keep us alive, drives that are reproductive. Those are all primitive drives that Freud believes everybody is trying in some way to either satisfy or control. And we'll get to that here in a second. So the id, if the id were to have a motto, it would be, I want. I want food. I want to sleep. I want to laugh. I want, okay? It lives off of the principle of I want. We don't know that it's operating. It operates at our unconscious level. So these are all the things that we want, but sometimes we're not even aware that we want them. You know, I think the best way to understand this is when you get hangry, okay? Sometimes you don't even realize you're being hangry because your id unconsciously is telling you, I am hungry, I want food. And so you start getting like upset and frustrated and mad at whoever you're with, not because you're mad at them necessarily, but you're hangry. Your id is sitting there going, I want food now, okay? So it operates on the unconscious mind. Now, Freud said we are born with an id. Okay, the minute we're born, we come out of our mother's womb, we're crying for something. We're cold, I want warmth. Or we're hungry, I want food. Okay. He also says that the id can be divided into two different kind of subcategories of the id. So the part that's sitting there saying, I want food, I want warmth, that's our eros. And it contains all of our drives to survive. All right. So eating, drinking, warmth, sexual activity. Although Freud did separate the sexual activity in saying that your specific drive to want sex or to reproduce is known as your libido. So your eros has a libido. Your id has an eros, which has a libido. And that's the energy to satisfy the drive of sex mostly. Okay, so you'll hear a lot of people refer to, well, that person has a really strong libido. Well, you know that they're often referring to the drive for sex. I'm going to move myself out of the way here. In addition, our id, according to Freud, also has a thanatos. Okay, and we all know this from, watching Avengers and things like that. This is our destructive drive. This is our aim to destroy ourselves and others. Now remember, this is all unconscious. We don't know that this is what we're doing. But the thanatos is a drive to do things that would be destructive to others or to yourself. So for instance, the drive to want to drink and become super drunk or inebriated, that is your thanatos. Or the drive to smoke, okay? That, according to Freud, would be your thanatos. You're destroying yourself. You know that this isn't good for you, but you want it, okay? Overeating is a destructive drive. Sometimes our destructive drive also can perpetuate onto other people. Maybe being mean to somebody, that's your thanatos, okay? Because you want to make them feel bad or you want to humiliate them. So these are all of your id. This is all of what your id is doing, and you don't really know when your id is acting. All right, sometimes. I'll explain that here in a second. So, this is the way I like to think of it. Your id is like your little devil on your shoulder. And then there's the superego, which is your angel on your shoulder. The superego is the part of our personality that says to us, hey, hold up. Is this really right to want this? Should I be really wanting this? So if the id is saying, oh, you totally want to jump on that really hot person that you see and you're attracted to in the hallway, and your superego goes, should we really do that? Should we really do that? Is that okay to do? So the superego ideal is that it wants us to do things that are right for us. It's our consciousness, really. It includes moral values of right and wrong that are instilled in us by our parents. We actually don't really even develop our superego, and I don't know where I have that. We don't really develop our superego right when we're born. This is something we learn over time, obviously, with parenting and our parents teaching us right from wrong in school, and school helping us to learn what's societally acceptable. So our superego makes us feel guilty when we do something wrong. It's that part of us that maybe we do something wrong and we listen to our id, and then our superego goes, yeah, that wasn't right. And you sit there and you're like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Okay, maybe your id goes to the freezer and eats the whole gallon tub of ice cream. And after you get done, you're like, ooh, that wasn't good. I shouldn't have done that. Maybe mom was going to use that, or I really shouldn't have eaten a whole gallon. I need to go now for a run. Those types of things. It motivates us to live up to our ideal. Okay. So I think that's a great picture here is, we have this picture of ourselves being like this superhero type of person where we do everything that is proper and right. But in the meantime, our little id's going, oh no, do this, so we've got the angel and the devil on our shoulder. So what mediates the angel and the devil? Our ego. Our ego is who we are consciously, okay? And our ego is what is saying all the time to us, let's be realistic. Let's do this in the way that we're not going to get in trouble or cause trouble. Let's do this in a way that is societally, I don't know why I keep saying it like that, which is acceptable by society, okay? So if my id is saying to me, I really want to eat that entire gallon of ice cream, eat that gallon of ice cream that's in the freezer, and your superego is over there saying, no, what if it's being saved for a party or a celebration, or you'll gain a bunch of calories and you don't want to do that. You're going to feel bad about that. It's our ego's job to figure out who to listen to and how to moderate between the two, okay? So our ego, it operates on the reality principle. It tries to satisfy the id by considering reward and punishment that exist in the situation. So maybe my ego says, you know what? Maybe take a couple of scoopfuls of ice cream and put it back, and then we won't feel guilty about eating that much ice cream, and there'll still be some left over in case mom had plans for that ice cream. Okay. So our ego is kind of that moderator. We don't really develop an ego until about, according to Freud, now this is all according to the psychoanalytics, okay? So some people do not believe in this personality theory. But according to Freud, we don't really start to develop an ego until about the age of about 6 months, okay? And again, remember, the idea of the ego is to serve as that moderator, to control the impulses of the id and to not be so overly anxious all the time about making the right decisions, but kind of moderating between that little angel on our shoulder that doesn't let us even have any fun in life, okay? So Freud says we develop this at about 6 months, That's when babies start to learn how to maybe control their ids, a little bit more. And you can see that happening. The big concept here is that according to Freud, we are in constant conflict between the id and the superego. And it's our job to get the ego to respond in an appropriate manner. Now, the thing is we're very, very, very careful with our little egos. Because if we hurt our egos, then, and our egos stop working well, then we'll fall victim to maybe the id or the superego all the time, and that's not good. So Freud says we're going to do things to always protect our egos. We're going to do things to make sure that we don't get hurt, okay? Because if our ego gets hurt, then things can get a little wonky, because now I don't have a moderator between that id and that superego, okay? And so Freud will say that sociopaths, they don't have that ego. They don't develop that ego. So maybe they fall victim to listening to that id. And maybe that id is saying, go kill that person. Go hurt that person. They hurt you. Go hurt them. And so that's why we have to take care of our little egos. We have to be careful with our little egos. All right. I'm going to put a discussion tab in to our class, so that if you have any questions about this, you can ask me and I can answer them. There's no points involved with it, but that way you can get some questions answered, because I know that this is a hard thing to always grasp your head around. And again, these are Freud's postulations. He didn't really have any empirical evidence. He had studied basically women that had what we would call unexplainable mental illness. And so, there's no quantifiable evidence to prove any of this, but it makes some sense, okay? And that's the crazy thing about Freud, is he makes some sense, even though there's not a lot of evidence for this, because we can't really prove we have an id or a superego, okay? Now, how do we protect that ego? So how we go about protecting that ego is we use things like defense mechanisms, okay? Defense mechanisms that we sometimes aren't even conscious that we use. So what I want you guys to do, normally in class we would do this together. We would spend probably 2 class periods doing this. I had to modify it. I apologize. This is definitely a fun part of this unit usually, but we're not together as a group. So what I want you guys to do is take this PDF. It's a 2-page PDF. And I want you to start to read from about right here, okay? And it's just going to go over what the job of the ego is, to moderate between that id and that superego. And then the reading's going to start talking about 8 different defense mechanisms. Things like repression, rationalization, displacement, regression, projection, reaction formations, denial, and sublimation. Once you read about each of these different types of defense mechanisms, read about the effects of the defense mechanisms, and then you can stop right there. We've already talked about stages of development, so you don't need to read that. But basically, guys, we use these defense mechanisms, and likely you use them and don't even know. And what we're doing when we use these defense mechanisms is we're protecting that ego. We're making sure it doesn't get hurt, okay? So you're going to read through those, and then you're going to go, and remember on Friday I had you guys pick 4 numbers, 1 through 7. I know I left out 8, and there's 8 defense mechanisms. It's because 8 is really hard to do. So, because you don't know that you do it. So you take your 4 numbers from Friday, all right? Take 4 numbers from Friday, go to right here where it says Freud's defense mechanisms, and this is our assignment. Your job, and again, the defense mechanisms reading is right there in case you missed it. I don't know. But your job is to take those 4 numbers, and let's say I chose number 2. So I'm going to do number 2, and I'm going to read what I need to do, think of an excuse for a situation that you used recently. Think of an excuse for a situation that you used recently to justify what you are doing. So you made up an excuse because your ego, if you don't make up the excuse, it may make you look bad. Your ego looks bad. So for instance, I give you an example of mine. You're going to do one of yours. So my example for rationalization is that I haven't cooked a single meal during quarantine because I'm fighting for women's rights. Okay. So, very true. Mr. Dupree is my personal chef, and he's amazing. But I haven't cooked a single meal during quarantine. If you count like putting an Eggo in the toaster, I've done that. But there's my excuse. So instead of hurting my ego, thinking like, "Oh, I'm just lazy," or I'm a bad cook, that hurts my ego, right? So instead, I make an excuse. And I say, well, I'm fighting for women's rights. Not all women need to be in the kitchen to be competent. And that would be some sort of rationalization I'm using to protect my ego. Okay. So you're going to do 4 of these based on the numbers that you picked. Okay. So you do not need to do all of them, but just do 4. All right. Then you'll submit that. Okay. Hopefully that makes some sense. And again, I'll have an area where you can ask questions if you're getting stuck on anything. I think that is it, guys. So, like I said, ask questions if you are lost. I'm trying to get there we go. Ask questions if you're lost or anything, or want some clarification. And, man, this lesson makes me really miss you, because some of those defense mechanisms are really fun to read out loud in class. We would usually do it anonymously. You'd be tearing off slips of paper, but unfortunately we weren't able to do that. But no, guys, I miss you, and I'll be talking to you soon. Bye.